And welcome back to the channel. Let me just say thanks for so many views on the premiere episode of my instructional videos. I really appreciate it, guys. I really do. I hope you're gonna get a lot out of this. The audio quality on that first one was a little rough. I'm experimenting with a new camera, and it's also got a microphone built in, and I sort of wanted to see whether or not that would work. And I can see now that wasn't the best idea. So what I'm doing is I'm running all the audio now through, you see I got a little headset mic on right here. It's not a booger hanging or anything. Um, I got a headset mic and my guitar, and everything's going through my studio stuff, my gear, and then I'm inputting that signal into the video. So we'll get a much better guitar sound. And I apologize for the sound quality on that last one. From now on, it's going to be a lot better, I promise. So in this one, I wanted to talk about tone, right? Before you really start taking off, getting good at what you do or getting better at what you do, you got to make sure you got your tone right, right? Because if it doesn't sound good, it's not going to feel good. I said that last time. If it doesn't sound good, it's not going to feel good. No matter what you do, no matter what you're playing, if it doesn't sound good, it takes a lot away from it takes away from you feeling good about what you're doing. So you need to get what I call the Holy Trinity in place. Obviously, your amp, if you're using an amp, it's probably got a decent, clean sound. But then you're going to start putting stuff in front of it to change that sound. Stuff like distortion or overdrive, chorus, delay, or echo, whichever one you want, and then reverbs. You might just be using the reverb from your amp, and that's fine. I use a Boss ME80. I'm the processor guy. So I got a big processor on the floor over here that you can't see, unfortunately. But I programmed a couple of different patches to give you an idea, just sounds, to help you understand what some of the differences between what I call the meat and potatoes, the Holy Trinity, distortion, chorus, delay. Okay? So what we're going to do first is we're going to play you sort of an overdrive. The overdrive effect on this pedal is based more on the way an amp overdrives when you turn it up loud, right? There's a headroom, there's a limit to volume. Once you reach that limit, it starts to break up. That's overdrive. That's when you're overdriving the amp. Distortion's completely different. Distortion is an artificial clipping of the wave. The way a guitar, the way the signal looks on a graph is it looks like like this. Well, when you artificially chop the bottom and the top off, it creates a distorted sound. And it's much more aggressive than, say, an overdrive is. An overdrive, this is a typical overdrive sound, is a little bit more responsive to the pick, first and foremost, right? If you bear down with the pick, you can get a lot more clipping to go on. And it's just, overall, it's just a little more, it's a milder kind of distortion or overdrive, right? Now I'm going to switch over. I'm going to switch patches real quick, and I'll show you the difference. That was an overdrive. Kind of a mellow, kind of a 70s, 60s, late 60s, 70s, early 80s kind of, driven tone. And now I'm going to switch over to something that's a little bit more over the edge. Let me just show you on the screen. I've switched over to what I call my hair metal patch. I don't know if you can see that. You see that? Hair metal. This is based on all that great 80s cheese metal that I just grew up loving. So this is a little different. Same riff, only this time we're going to play it with a distortion, right? Very different. You know how bright it is, how much more intense it is. An overdrive is a much mellower kind of approach, more of a crunch than a distortion. So let's pull that back up, and I'll play a couple of riffs with the overdrive to give you an idea of what it's really good for. I mean, it's great for whatever you have to determine the specific sound that you're looking for, what your sound might be, or say for instance, if like me, you played in a cover band, you want to sound like as close as you can get anyway to the original artist. So, and it's good to have both an overdrive and a distortion because you can go both ways. You know what I mean? You can go both ways. You can cover it all. That's more of a 70s kind of, you know, late 60s or, you know, and then 70s era. See, more of a 70s kind of rock sound. Whereas the distortion, let me put that back on, the distortion's more of an 80s kind of sound. It's what I like to call it hair metal, glam metal, cheese metal. You know what I mean? That 80s stuff was just so good, man. It was just awesome. Much different. Big difference. Now, since I'm a child of the 80s, I grew up, you know, 80s was kind of the decade. That's when I was learning to play guitar. So I fashioned my own specific tone, my own style, based on the players from that era. Guys, you know, stuff, Def Leppard, Eddie Van Halen, those guys had a really rich distortion and really intense. So that's kind of what my own style is. That's one of my favorite patches. That hair metal patch, I just love it. It's just... So you got to get your tone figured out first. Overdrive or distortion. Do you want something mild, but with a lot of, you know, a lot of presence in it? Go for an overdrive. If you want something that's really up front and really in your face and kind of, you know, got some with a little hair on it, go with a distortion. And, you know, you can adjust your gain on both one. They'll each have a gain. Your overdrive will have a gain amount and your distortion will have a gain amount, and you can experiment between the two to find what you particularly are looking for, specifically for a song you're either learning or a song that you're writing. I use my ME80 in the studio, in my home studio. So, and I'm actually writing and recording material for a new CD. So I've been leaning on that 80s patch, that hair metal patch, quite a bit because it's kind of my tone, right? It's really what I like a lot. So. It's rich and it's thick and I really love it. The next one we're going to talk about, I'm going to go to a clean sound and we're going to add some effects to it to let you hear what the different things are going to do for you. Okay? Now this is just the basic clean sound. Let me turn something on here. I'll turn on, where's the, oh, I don't see it. Compressor is on already. So there we go. And then we'll just hit the boost. Basic clean sound, okay? There's a little bit of delay and a little bit of reverb, but... Oh, wait, let me take that distortion off. I want to get an absolutely clean sound. Okay. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a pitch shift to it. What a pitch shift does is, you know what, let me back up. Let's start with the chorus first. Chorus is probably the most common number 2 effect, or number 3 effect. There's distortion, and there's delay, and then there's chorus. These are the ones that pretty much everyone uses. Chorus sounds really great. Sounds good on a distorted tone. Sounds even better on a clean tone. And I've still got some distortion going on that I don't want. Now I'll switch from a chorus to a detune. A detune is like a chorus in a way, but the thing is, it does not cycle. There's no cycling sound. And that's where you can hear the distance between the note that's in tune and the note that's slightly out of tune. That changes with a chorus. You can change how far apart they are, the distance or the delay between the clean or between the original and the chorus signal, but the pitch shift that I use detunes the guitar slightly, right? Then it gives you your original tone and the detuned tone slightly delayed. You can delay them ever so slightly, okay? See, now that's... That's my favorite number 2 effect. Number 1, I'll pick my distortion or whatever I'm going to use. Distortion or overdrive. Number 2, I pick the harmonist because I just like it. I just like it a lot. It's really, really cool. And I'll show you that on the, this is my harmonist right here. Okay. I've got the harmonist on over here. And what it does, when you set the harmonist to 0, you set that harmony to 0, you'll get that detune effect. And then you can turn up the level of the detune and hear, you know, a big difference, right? You might want to start out with it small. I love it. I just absolutely love using that detune because it just makes the guitar sound so much fuller. First thing to figure out about tone, get your clean sound, okay? Your amp. Don't turn any gain or any distortion or anything on. Don't do that. Get your clean sound figured out first. Do you want to use a chorus, or do you want to use a flanger, or do you want to use a phaser or some other modulation? Those are called modulation effects. They modulate the sound of the guitar. So figure that out first, okay? And then figure out, you know, which distortion you want to use. When you're testing your distortion or your overdrive, turn your chorus off, turn your modulation effects off, and listen to it completely unaffected by other effects. That's good too with delay or with reverb. Turn everything off. Just listen to the distortion or the overdrive. Find what you like there, and then add some things to it as you go along, okay? This one, I call this my early rush patch. And that's just very basic, right? As it goes along, I'll add a little bit more to it. But figure out your clean sound first. Figure out whether you want chorus or flanger or phaser, whatever it is. Experiment with them. There are some very cool sounds you can create using a phaser and a flanger. Get that figured out on your clean sound, and then start working on what your distortion sound's going to be, right? Are you going to use a more traditional, natural sounding overdrive, or do you want something that's got a little hair on it, a little meat to it? That's why I like that turbo distortion so much. It's just got a lot of meat to it, right? Let me pull that back up, and then I'll give a few more examples of why I love this so much. Let me fix this too. Is that on? That's on, yeah. There we go. All right, so this distortion, this is just me. I've adopted this as my tone, right? And I'll roll back on the volume knob when I don't want it to be as brash or as bright. I'll roll back on the volume knob. Rolling back on the volume knob will also roll off some of the highs in your tone. And that's kind of what you're looking for, right? You can just roll back a little. A little bit more aggressive. I personally like the aggressiveness of a distortion. It works better for me. There are times, though, when I want to get a little bit more of a subdued, distorted sound. So I'll use an overdrive instead. And then, and here's the thing to remember. Overdrive is better going to let you hear the guitar. It's better at letting you hear the guitar, okay? Whereas a distortion is better at letting you hear the distortion. That's the thing. If I plugged my Strat in right now and turned an overdrive on, you'd hear the beauty of those pickups in that guitar. You'd hear it with an overdrive. A distortion just kind of muddies it up and covers up the sound of the guitar. If that's okay for you, then go with a distortion. This Ibanez, this is my favorite. You'll see me using this one on just almost every video I do these days. I got this a couple of years ago. It's a reissue of the an 80s model that I used to have one. I think it's a reissue of the 550, I think. But it's my favorite guitar right now. The pickups are not super hot in it, okay? They're about a medium, okay? They're somewhere across between, say, a Strat and a Les Paul, and I've got both, Strat and a Les Paul. This fits right in the middle of both of them. That's the Strat. I use that for the more mellow stuff, for clean things. I do use it to solo with, but I'll use an overdrive with it because I want to hear the sound of that guitar. That guitar sounds so beautiful. The Les Paul, on the other hand, tends to add a lot of meat to the tone. It's a Les Paul. So it adds a lot of really hot quality to the tone. So overdrive or distortion. Overdrive, typically you're going to find overdrives in 60s, 70s, and early 80s. And distortions you will find more typically in 80s, early 90s, 80s and 90s, and then it starts to fade out a little bit. You'll know you'll hear a big difference. From the point Nirvana started, distortion kind of went away, and they went back to the overdrive as the main source of gain for the sound. Okay, so you just got to figure out which one you like. It's all personal taste. You know, don't let anyone tell you, say, hey man, that sound sucks. If you like it, don't listen to that. Yeah, well, that's me. That's my sound. I like that. So that's kind of what I wound up doing. I use distortion on everything now because I respond to it better. I know how to work that distortion to my advantage. I know how to make that work for me. So whichever one's going to work for you, pick it, stick with it, okay? And then learn to add those modulation effects, chorus, phaser, flanger, those kinds of things. A rotary effect. I've got all kinds of effects in this ME80. I mean, just tons of them. Univibe is one of my favorites. The Univibe, the rotary, you name it. It's just got tons of great modulation effects just built in. It's got some great delay effects, and it's got reverb. That's what I'll say. It's not great reverb, but it's got reverb. Most of the time, the reverb you're going to hear me using is from, I don't know if you can see it over my shoulder over here, this right here. That's my FX 2000. That's the Behringer Virtualizer 3D. And this is my studio effects processor. and I've got my guitar run through my mixer, and I can add this and skip any bad effects I might find in my processor. All right. So a little short one today, just tone. Tone. Get your tone right before you start thinking about learning anything more complex. Before you start doing any of the other stuff, get your tone right. Okay. And when you're doing scale exercises and dexterity exercises, they're not always going to be played with a clean tone. You're going to need overdrive distortion to work on some of them, because that distortion or that overdrive may be integral to the lesson itself. If you're going to learn something, like tap harmonics. Tap harmonics are really hard to do with a clean sound. Tap harmonics, this. You got to have a little bit of distortion or overdrive, whatever you want to call it. You got to have a little bit of meat there to make those notes really ring out, okay? Those tap harmonics. It's going to work a whole lot better when you've got some distortion. So get that figured out. Overdrive or distortion, pick one. Play with it until you like it, right? And then make that the basis. Make that the base, what I call the cake, right? That distortion or the overdrive, that's the cake, right? Chorus and delay and reverb, that's frosting and sprinkles. You got to get the cake baked first before you can put the frosting and sprinkles on. Get that figured out first. Tone is so important. If it sounds great, you'll feel great about playing it. You'll progress faster because you'll hear, your tone will be such that you'll hear what you're looking to hear as you're learning. You got to trust me on this one. All right? So I got some crap I got to go do. It's, Thursday morning, and, I got stuff I got to go do. But happy to come here and spend a little time with you. Again, thanks so much for all the views. Subscribe. I can't stress that strongly enough. You'll automatically get a notification when there's a new video up on the channel. Subscribe. All right? Thanks again, everybody. Guys, peace.